What's up guys, Belamy Prime here, and today we're going to be going into part 2 of our melee class reviews video. Now, for this video I was planning on doing the same as part 1, where I talk about 2 main classes and then a bonus class. However, I wanted to cut the video down a little bit and not have another 50-minute long video, and I've decided to split this up into 3 different videos. So today we're going to be talking about Executioner only. We're going to be going through and reviewing it, giving it some scores, some ratings. And then in the next 2 videos, we'll do our Shadow Blade and then our 2-hand dual wield blighter video. So execution only for today. We're going to jump straight in. We're going to talk about the power, the mobility, the control, and the utility that Executioner as a class itself brings for DPS melee. And so we're just going to jump straight in.
Alrighty, so for those of you who aren't aware, Executioner is battlerage, shadowplay, and occultism. The first thing we're going to talk about is power for this class. Now, occultism as a tree itself doesn't give us any real increases or reductions to our damage any kind of way. It does give us a very small amount of attack speed, which shouldn't be overlooked. It is nice. But, there's nothing that's going to be giving us any kind of crazy damage increases, like, say, the Stonecraft skill tree giving us crit rates and crit damages and different things like that. So, we're going to give Executioner a 4 out of 5 for power. You're going to have no trouble killing your target. All your damage is still coming from your battlerage and shadowplay skill trees, and it also doesn't hinder you in any way. So, not a 5 out of 5 like a Blade Dance or anything like that, but still 4 out of 5. Strong, very powerful, you can kill your target no problem. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is mobility. Now, the only mobility skill that Occultism brings to the table is your Shadow Step. Now, Shadow Step, at first glance, is a pretty one-dimensional skill, especially in 1 versus 1. You can use it to teleport directly behind an ally or an enemy. Now, see, this can be used to teleport behind an enemy, like so, or it can be used in a group situation to teleport behind an ally to use as an escape. But obviously in a 1 versus 1, you don't have any allies, so Shadow Step more or less will be used as an engage tool or a chasing tool. However, I will point out that there are some ways to use this as an escape tool even in a 1 versus 1. If you take Summon Wraith from the Occultism tree down here, and then take the Ancestral version, which is the Mist version. Instead of summoning a ring around you, it will summon a Wraith at a target location that will begin to curse enemies in the area, but obviously we can use this as a teleport, so we can place our Wraith on the ground, target the Wraith, and then Shadow Step to it. Quite simple, right? Can be used as an escape. You won't find yourself using this super often, but it is nice to know that it is, it's there for you to use, so play with it if you like. We do have 2 other ancestral versions of Shadow Step. We have the Lightning Shadow Step, which can be used an additional 2 times if you cast it within 3 seconds of the initial cast. So but obviously we get a reduced duration, so we can read here, teleports cast behind an ally or enemy up to 3 times. With each teleportation, the range decreases from 15 to 12 meters and then to 6 meters. So we can teleport the 1 time, and then a 2nd time, and then a 3rd time. We can, And there aren't that many applications for this. I don't like to use it. I think it's quite trash, to be frank. But if you want to play around with this skill, there are ways to use it, but it's not too great. The other ancestral Shadow Step that we want to talk about is the Mist version. Now, the Mist version is exactly the same as the regular Shadow Step, except it can be used to teleport behind stealth targets that we can't see. Now, essentially, the way this works is that, if you're out of range of anything and you're trying to use Shadow Step, it will basically say you don't have a target, you can't use this until you see until you move to a regular target. However, if you have a stealthed enemy near you, it will automatically teleport to them. So we'll get Dweeb here to stealth for us. We won't be able to see him. Now, if we're out of range, we're mashing our thing here. You can see once we get in range, it will automatically teleport to him. It will not break him out of stealth, but we can get next to him. And if you're doing something like automatic, spamming your Hell Spear or something after the Shadow Step, they will be in range of you for you to Shadow Step and then immediately CC them and break them out of their stealth. So if we go here, we can just, till we get in range, and then Hell Spear. Pretty simple, easy to do something like that, right? So this is quite powerful in 1 versus 1 scenarios. if your enemy stealths before you, or even if you're both in stealth, you can just walk around spamming your missed shadow step. Once you're in range, it'll automatically target, and as long as you can react quick enough, you can instantly be CCing them out of stealth. And this can be quite powerful, and it looks quite cool. Alright, so the next thing we want to talk about for Executioner is our control. Now, this is the main draw towards a class like Executioner, the control, the amount of CC you have. Executioner or Occultism as a tree on its own provides a extremely large amount of crowd control. So we're going to talk about the ones that are viable as an Executioner, the ones you want to be taking as a DPS focused Executioner, and the ones that I like to play with especially. Now the first one, we'll just go from left to right here. First one, Crippling Mire. Now Crippling Mire is a pretty basic skill, just places a tether between you and your enemy and slows their move speed. Now, we like to take the Quake Crippling Mire simply because it hits multiple enemies. So the main way we use Crippling Mire is for the slow effect, which we can combo quite nicely with our Whirlwind Slash. Now, with Crippling Mire, we can see it hits multiple targets, and then we can Whirlwind Slash for a nice group trip. Now, this can hit up to 5 enemies, and obviously there's no limit to the amount of enemies that our Whirlwind Slash can hit, as long as they're within the 5 meter radius of it. So this is a nice way to combo a nice little AoE trip. So very, very powerful skill, not just for the slow and the effects that that gives, but for the trip that we can combo it into. The next skill is Absorb Life. Now Absorb Life is used for many reasons. It's actually very powerful against like healers and targets you want to pop really quick because it will reduce their healing effectiveness by 60%, but it also can be used to apply a stun. Now, once you cast Absorb Life on a target, it will remain tethered to them for 6.5 seconds. During that duration, if the target moves 20 meters away from you, they will be stunned for 2.4 seconds. Now, basically, this is very powerful against anyone who wants to kite from you, or anyone who wants to run away from you. So any healers, archers, or mages, basically, who want to run. So if we do this, we can see if we move to a distance, we get the stun on the monster. And this can be used in many different applications. Obviously, you don't have to use it to apply the stun. If you just throw it on them to reduce their healing to try and finish them off, and then they happen to escape, it'll be a good way to stop them from escaping you too easily. Okay, so the next control skill that we have in our arsenal as an Executioner is Cursed Thorns. Now, I don't run Cursed Thorns. I don't think it's good to run as a melee. More often than not, it's just going to give your target impale immunity, or it's just going to sit on them, debuffing them, not actually doing anything, not applying any kind of impales, not doing anything. Okay, so I personally don't run Cursed Thorns. I wouldn't recommend running Cursed Thorns. I think it's complete trash for Executioner. But, of course, if you're trying this class out, you might find a niche way to use this skill. We'll read out what it does, and I'll explain how it works real quick for you. It inflicts a single enemy with cursed seeds for 10.5 seconds, and basically it will spawn a cursed pool under their under that player every second, while whether they move or not. And if they remain in that pool, that cursed pool, for more than 4 seconds after that small delay, it will impale them for 2.5 seconds. Now, the reason this isn't very good is because generally, unless you're locking someone down, the impale's not really going to, be effective. And if you're already locking someone down, you're already doing a CC train combo, and you don't need a random impale to pop up 4 seconds into, you locking them down. So generally, this is just bad to use because it will give impale immunity to your target when you don't want it for a potential second health spear in, say, a 1v1 or something like that. And it just seems unnecessary and unneeded and just more or less a waste of a skill point. I don't run it. I wouldn't recommend it. But if you try the class, mess around with it, maybe you'll like it. The next CC skill we want to talk about is Hell Spear. Now, there are 2 different options for Hell Spear. We can run, there's obviously three Ancestrals. We don't like to run the Flame Hell Spear because it has a big delay beforehand, and not only that, after the single impale, it gives impale immunity, which even in group play isn't exactly, you don't want to be giving all the targets you impale immunity immediately, so we steer away from the Flame Impale. If we want to do any kind of AoE impales, we take the basic Hell Spear. It's essentially just a ring around you that inflicts an impale. Yeah, we'll start a duel here real quick and we can display that. So regular impale, just an AoE around you, impales the target for a duration of 3.1 seconds. So you can easily land this on a target in a group or a single target just by shadow stepping to them and then immediately hell spearing. And then this can also be comboed in with your Tiger Strike, which will apply a 3-second trip. So if you impale someone, Tiger Strike to them, the Tiger Strike will then turn the impale into a trip for 3 seconds. This can be comboed quite nicely. People tend to run, as executioners, the Mist Hell Spear. It is a single target Hell Spear, much easier to hit because it is a tap target one, not an AoE that you have to kind of rely on to hit yourself. As long as you're within range, you can impale, and then you can turn it into a trip with your Tiger Strike quite easily, just like that. So I recommend playing mostly with the Mist Hell Spear for the most part while you're playing Executioner. If you're in a group situation and you don't have any kind of dedicated CC mage or anything like that, and you want to have that little bit of extra CC, then sure, you can take the AoE one. And you can even get AoE trips, like if you hit multiple targets, like 3 or 4 or 5 targets with a AoE Hell Spear, and then Tiger Strike, every enemy that you hit with that Tiger Strike is going to be tripped after that impale. So it is quite powerful in group play if you use it that way.
Alright, so the next crowd control skill that we're going to talk about is Summon Wraith. Now, there are 3 versions of Summon Wraith. Only one of them is really viable as a melee player, and that's the Mist Ancestral version of Summon Wraith. The other 2 are channel skills that you have to stand still to use, not very good as a melee player. However, the Mist one allows you to place a Wraith at a target location up to 15 meters away, which has a 7 meter effect range, curses up to 20 enemies within the radius for 9 whole seconds. Now, the curse slows their move speed, attack speed, and cast time. So we can use this to combo with our Whirlwind Slash for a trip. So if we use this on an enemy here, we can slow them, and then we can trip them. And as long as you're adept at placing it, wherever you need to be CCing someone or tripping someone, it's quite easy to use this skill as long as you're, placing it in the right location. It's quite easy to place on an enemy that's next to you or already CC'd to keep your CC train going. And you can also use it on a clump of enemies before you go in. You can throw it down on the clump from a safe distance, then behind enemy lines in and whirlwind for a guaranteed trip on all those targets. And you'll also be guaranteeing that they're slowed and hindered before you even get in. So a good skill, the only viable version of the Summon Rate that you want to be really using as a melee, but very powerful. The next CC skill we want to talk about is Death's Vengeance. Now, Death's Vengeance, at first glance, if you read it as a single skill, it doesn't seem too appealing. Essentially, when you die, you will explode, dealing magic damage in an 8 meter radius around you, and affected enemies are stunned for 6 whole seconds. Now, this is quite strong in group PvP. If you happen to get caught out of position and you die with Death's Vengeance on you, you will stun everyone around you for 6 whole seconds, which is a great hindrance on the enemy raid if multiple people were ganged up on top of you to kill you. So it's quite strong and very frustrating for enemies to have to deal with this, but it can also be forced to use the stun in the 6 meter radius, the 8 meter radius around you. And the way we do this is by using Play Dead. Now, Play Dead basically simulates your death, so your Death's Vengeance will pop. Now, once you cast Death's Vengeance, it will stay on you forever until you die or until you play dead. We can see here that our Play Dead is lit up because it's ready to be comboed with your Death's Vengeance for the stun. Now, you can use this in multiple ways. If you play dead near any kind of target, it will stun them for a 3-second duration. It's not the full 6 seconds like if you were to actually die, because obviously, you're not getting that full trade-off. We can see the Play Dead combos, triggers Death's Vengeance when used, but reduces the damage and the stun duration by 50%. So the base stun duration is 6 seconds, so 50% of that is 3 seconds. We can force a 3-second stun on all our enemies around us within an 8 meter radius, so quite simple to use.
or stun anyone around us, you can simply stand up from the play dead and then go about your business. So, very powerful skill to use, especially as any kind of engage tool, as it is an instant stun. Nothing has any kind of travel time. So it's very easy to use and very powerful. Not only in group PvP, but also in in 1v1 scenarios. You can quite easily shadow step to a target and then Death's Vengeance. The radius is quite large and very easy to use. So as we can see from this, we have a lot of crowd control coming from the Occultism tree. The important ones to be running as a melee, I would say, are at least Hellspear. Hellspear seems to be the most powerful of all the CC skills in our disposal as an Executioner. It is my personal favorite, and it is very strong. And then you either run Crippling Mire or Summon Wraith, as both combo with your Whirlwind Slash. My personal preference is Summon Wraith because it can be used with the Shadow Step to, create a form of escape. And it can also be, comboed with the Whirlwind Slash. And obviously the Crippling Mire can only hit up to 5 enemies in a small little AoE, whereas the Summon Wraith seems to have a bigger effect range. You have more control over where you place it, and it can hit up to 20 enemies. So the limit of how many people you can trip in a group is a lot higher, and it just seems to be a lot more powerful. Now, Absorb Life Force is a 50-50 whether or not I take it. In 1v1s against archers, it's quite powerful, so I'll tend to spec into it for archers if they're, if I'm having trouble keeping up with them, if they really go to kiting or something like that. And also in raid situations when there's a lot of healers and things like that, or people are getting a lot of heals, being able to reduce someone's received healing while also being able to stun them if they move too far away from you is quite strong. So I'll take this in different scenarios. Now, I know a lot of people like to use the Death's Vengeance play dead combo in 1v1 and in group scenarios. I don't necessarily tend to put this many points into Occultism to pick up Death's Vengeance, so I don't tend to run it very often. But if you can, if you can find a way to put the points in there and you want to commit to having that extra bit of CC, then it is very powerful, so feel free to run it. I personally just don't like to run it because it takes a minimum of 6 points into Occultism, the 5 to unlock Death's Vengeance, and then the 6th to actually pick it up. And generally, I only really have 4 to 5 points to put in it. I generally only really want to pick up Hellspear, and then, if you can take the Death's Vengeance, then sure. But generally, I prefer to have more of my points stacked in battlerage. So I don't always run Death's Vengeance, but it is good to take if you like to take it. Alright, now the last part we will talk about for Occultism or Executioner is going to be our utility. So the first utility skill we've already spoken about is our Absorb Life, and the utility from this skill comes in the form of reducing your target's received healing by 60% and also healing you for 13% of your max HP. Now, like I said, we've already spoken about this. It's good to take down targets who are getting focused heals or healers themselves, as it will reduce a large amount of their healing potential and make it a lot easier to burst through their heals if they're not completely CC locked the whole time. So very powerful skill to take out healers especially. Good utility. The next utility we'll talk about is Boneyard. Boneyard essentially just puts up a cage around your target, locking them in place. It will stagger them as well as you cast it, which is basically kind of like a small stun to lock them in place. So we'll place the Boneyard around the target. It can be broken out of, but it will hinder them for a few seconds at least, and you can lock them in place in the bone cage to, use any kind of CC skills or AoE from outside of the range of the skill. So we'll show that here real quick. You can see that from 18 meters out, I believe 20 meters is the range. We can cast Boneyard. We'll trap them in the Boneyard, and you can break this as a player. So you just press F, and you can break it and move in and out of the Boneyard, but it will trap you in place for a small duration, and is very powerful in raids to, lock yourself in a Boneyard with a target that's getting focused heals or anything like that, so that they have line of sight issues with healers. Alright, so the next utility skill we're going to be talking about is Summon Crows. Now, Summon Crows can be used in two different very useful ways. The first useful way is when you combo it with an impale. If you impale a target and then use crows before the impale ends, it will decrease the accuracy on that target for a duration. Now we can show the duration here real quick. So we got our impale and we'll pick up a crows. Now we can impale a target here, impale, and then we can crows, and it will decrease the accuracy for a small duration. Now, at first glance, this accuracy reduction might not seem very powerful, but as someone like a melee who relies heavily on hitting your skills to continue your CC combo, accuracy generally will hinder that very heavily. So I go for the impale and then, summon crows for 5 seconds. That person, even when they come out of the impale, is going to have a huge amount of reduced accuracy. So if they go to attack me with any kind of skill that is a crowd control skill and it misses, then the crowd control and they've wasted a skill. So very powerful in 1v1, very powerful in groups, very strong. Now the second way to use crows is to break people out of stealth. Now if someone is in stealth, we can see here that it affects stealth targets up to 30 meters away. So this is very strong in gladiator arenas or any kind of arena. If at the start of the arena your enemy target decides to stealth, you can very easily attempt to close the gap a little bit to make sure you're within the 30-meter range. So you can behind enemy lines close to them and then immediately crows. It will reveal them for a small duration while the crows is on them. You'll know exactly where they are and you'll be able to target them. You can then proceed to stealth yourself to stop them from targeting you and then approach them and attack them before the crows end, giving you an advantage. They can't attack you, you can attack them. And not only that, it can be used to break them out of stealth. So if I see someone stealth, I can very easily, behind enemy lines, closer to them to ensure I'm within 30 meters, use crows, and then once they're revealed, I can target them so I can basic arrow them from a range to drop their stealth. And then proceed to stealth myself or whatever I want to go from there. So used correctly, this is very powerful in 1v1 scenarios and also in group situations. Now obviously if you're in some kind of water PvP or land PvP and there's going to be melees lurking around your raid, it's very easy to just pop crows to make sure that there's no one around you in stealth. And generally if there is, it means they're very heavily out of position, so it can generally it will be an easy pick-off for you and your raid. So used correctly, the crows can be a very powerful skill. The next utility we'll talk about is arguably a CC or a crowd control ability as well, but I elected to talk about it in the utility here because I'm not exactly sure where I think it would fall, but it's a very powerful skill. I don't run this as an executioner, and I don't really know anyone as an executioner who does. But in group PvP, if you really just want to be a piece of shit, you can use this skill. Now, essentially what you can do with this skill is you can place it on a clump of people and it will just vortex them into the center and hold them there. Now they can teleport out of this, and apparently these mobs can just run straight out of it for whatever fucking reason. But in a group situation, casting a vortex on a clump will basically ensure that they stay remained in there. You can then cast a bone cage, or you can throw a summon wraith down on them and then jump in with a whirlwind slash and guarantee that you'll hit everyone in that clump. There's multiple different ways you can use the vortex. It's not the greatest skill as a melee user. Obviously using anything that has any kind of cast time feels extremely clunky as a melee because you generally don't have any cast time at all, or cast time reduction I should say. So not the greatest skill. Take it, play with it if you like, but I wouldn't recommend it. Now the last utility skill that I'll talk about in Occultism is your Pain Harvest. Now I don't run this personally myself as an executioner because I play quite a squishy melee, so generally if I'm taking hits I'm going to die, but Pain Harvest basically reads, each time you receive a critical strike, it decreases the active Occultism cooldowns by 1 second. So, if you use like a Vortex and then your crows and, you've used your Hell Spear on a target and then you're getting hit by critical strikes while you have your Pain Harvest buff up, then it's going to reduce the cooldowns on all those skills, allowing you to use them again sooner. Now, if you are quite a tanky player, you play a tanky kind of a melee class, then this might be a good skill for you if you can tank some damage. I myself am currently playing in Flames, so generally if I'm taking critical hits, I'm normally dead, or, you know, I can only tank 1, 2, maybe 3 hits if they're big enough hits in a row. So, you know, reducing the cooldowns on my skills by 2 or 3 seconds generally isn't very significant. So I don't tend to run Pain Harvest. If you play a tankier melee style, then you might consider using this and trying this, see how it feels for you, but I myself, I don't run this, but it's there, you can use it. So as we can see, we have a decent amount of utility at our disposal. The Absorb Life Force utility in itself is very valuable, on top of the Crows, also very valuable. And then Bone Caves used in certain scenarios can be quite useful as well. So Executioner has a very large amount of utility in its kit, and very useful utility at that matter. So we're going to give it a utility score of 4 out of 5. Obviously we don't have anything like CC breaks and CC immunities or anything like that, but we have healing reduction, accuracy reduction, ways to break people out of stealth, and ways to line of sight targets to stop them from getting heals and things like that. So used correctly, the utility here in this kit is very, very powerful. So 4 out of 5 for utility. Alright, well that's pretty much it for Executioner. Overall, we can see that we have a power score of 4 out of 5, a mobility score of 3 out of 5, a control score of 5 out of 5, and a utility skill of 4 out of 5. So a very good all-round class, extremely powerful in 1 versus 1s. I'd say that's where this class mostly excels. And also very good for small-scale group PvP, especially if you're taking, you know, the AoE version of Hellspear and things like that. You can provide a lot of utility to your team comp, as well as put out a lot of damage. So a very powerful class, and I recommend you try playing it. It's very fun, very enjoyable class to play.
Alright guys, that's it for this video. I hope you learnt a little thing or two about Executioner, whether you're thinking about trying out the class, or whether you just want to know a little thing or two about it as someone who's going to be versing it a lot in things like gladiators and sparring arenas, or just in open world in general. It's always good to know more about what you're going to be versing. So, I hope you liked the video. I hope you learnt something. If you liked the video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I've just got a small announcement that we have started a very small Discord server for any of you guys, new and returning players or veterans alike, to come over. Maybe you got some questions you want to ask, or some, you know, theory crafting ideas that you've had for different melee builds, or mages, or archers, or whatever it is you play. It's all welcome there. I just want it to kind of be a small community where people can kind of share ideas and ask questions and things like that. We've got myself and some other content creators in the Discord as well, so come over, say hello. I'll leave a link in the description to the Discord, and I'll see you guys in the next video.